Hello, hello. We are here on the Imperfect PCOS podcast, joined by Savana from Body Image Therapist. And I am super excited for today's conversation. I feel like this is such an important topic that all women need, and it's just ever evolving. And I really want to, when I say that, I really want to get more into that, but it's an ever evolving conversation as our society it continues on its own journey when it comes to body image and body acceptance. Savana is a body image therapist. She is a fellow PCOS sister, whoop, whoop, who's learned to live guilt-free in her body after PCOS weight gain. Savana helps women stop obsessing over the size of their body, leave guilt and shame behind, and have a stress-free relationship with food. Welcome, Savana.
You're listening to the Imperfect PCOS podcast, where we share no BS science-backed strategies to put your PCOS into remission. I'm your host, Corey Ruth, aka the Women's Dietitian. Let's get into it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and Savana's joining us from Canada, which is awesome. And we discovered prior to recording both of our lack of geography skills. We're both like, where are you? So nice to have you and, virtually meet you. Tell us first, I want to know how you got into this niche and how you became a body image therapist. Tell us a little bit about your personal journey, when it comes to PCOS and weight and body image.
Yeah, that's a big question.
In one sentence. No, I'm just kidding.
You're going to get a paragraph. I'm going to warn you.
I'm here for it.
Okay, so my journey through body image, it's been a really long journey, not going to lie. Like right from I was a child, I was never the skinny friend, never got to share clothes with my friends. Always kind of felt like I glamorized this idea of like being skinny in my head. And so I kind of like moved through my teen years, just like never really getting to be skinny, really get that experience that I thought would be so glamorous. And then when I was in university, that's when things really started to shift for me. I did have really bad anxiety. And so it had been debilitating for a couple of years, and then I had started to get things on track. And then as I started to get my anxiety on track and really took control, I don't know why, but I just remember like the first thing I wanted to do was just like get a flat stomach. Like that was my goal, was to get a flat stomach. And so I had got myself a fitness coach, and I remember sitting in her office, we're like getting ready to plan like out my meals and my fitness and all that stuff. And I remember saying to her, like, I will not let anything get in the way of me having a flat stomach. Like I will not stop until I get there. And so, yeah, like pretty intense mindset. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I did go down like the super intense, like dieting road where I was doing all these like grueling exercises. So like lots of HIIT cardio, lots of fasted cardio, even lots of like weightlifting, that like no excuses mindset. I can like see her like, oh my gosh. And of course she has PCOS now.
If I didn't know before, I know now.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, no, it's that motivation can be great, but it can be also on the flip side, the shadow side, debilitating. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And so things had kind of escalated for me. Like I was really just like tunnel vision, really wanting this like really skinny flat stomach body. And so I continued on just chronic dieting essentially for a few years. And then I decided that I really wanted to take my fitness to the next level. And so then I did a bikini competition.
Oh, wow. Those are hardcore. I mean, wow. Like that. Yeah. Okay. I definitely want to hear more about that.
Yeah, very hardcore. So I did like, they call it prep. So I did a 4-month prep.
Okay.
And so what that entailed was like, I was doing fasted cardio for 4 mornings a week, like for the 4 months, for, I think it was like 50 to 60 minutes. I would do the fasted cardio, and then I would have the very strict meal plan that you have to follow.
And then a day or 2.
Pardon me, sorry.
One chia seed a day, or maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, and then yell at myself in the mirror.
Oh gosh, that just sounds so intense.
It was intense, and it was so weird because at the time, like, I didn't think anything of it. Like, looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like my mindset was actually really disturbing. But at the time though, I was like, I'm in my elements, like I'm a hard worker, like this is
Mhm.
good, right?
Right.
Like I'm crushing goals. And
Yes.
so yeah, I was pretty intense.
Mhm.
And then at the same time as doing my fitness competition, so my background is social work. And
Okay.
so I was actually working in child protection at the time, which is a
Oh,
really stressful,
yeah,
traumatic job.
I can
Uh,
only imagine.
Totally. And so kind of like managing that amongst doing this really intense prep probably is what did me in, because then after my fitness competition, I did have like my first PCOS symptoms that I didn't know were PCOS symptoms at the time.
Interesting. Okay, so
Right.
that's when you kind of flared. Yeah. Okay.
Totally.
All right. So you went from, that extreme, and then how did you kind of come out of that and start your journey at working kind of on the other side?
Yeah, pretty tumultuous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so for probably about 8 months, I would say after my competition prep, I had done the whole like reverse diet thing where you kind of
Okay.
slowly increase your calories. And I personally at that time felt like I was doing good, but looking back though, I was not doing good because I was still doing fasted cardio out of like guilt and shame and fear of like, oh my gosh, am I gonna
Mm,
gain weight, and that mentality. And so I was still really putting my body through hell, to be honest, and didn't probably increase my calories to where they should have been. I was keeping myself at a fairly low like kind of calorie intake.
right.
So then I was still kind of hardcore, but then I started to get these symptoms of like the very first one was like I got eczema on my eyelids. And I
Oh
know.
my gosh. Wow. I have eczema, right? Okay.
Yes. Or is
Yes.
that how you say it? Okay.
Oh, I don't, maybe it's different in here. I don't know, but I have eczema. My son has it. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah,
Wow.
totally.
And it can really flare with stress, by the way.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. And so that it's funny because like I guess I'm not surprised that that happened right after my fitness competition, because when you think of the hell that I put my body through, and then like with work being so intense and stressful, I'm like, yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Um
Totally.
so then I was dealing with that. That was the very first symptom I had. And then I actually started, which I didn't know this at the time, but I actually started experiencing symptoms of low cortisol.
Okay.
Which I'm sure you probably see that lots, where it's like when you
Mhm.
have, those periods where cortisol is so high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started dealing with low cortisol, and then I started to have weight gain. Initially, the weight gain did feel like it was just kind of always like that 10 pounds I couldn't lose. Like it didn't feel like anything too intense in the beginning. Yeah, but I did think it was weird because
Yeah.
I was still tracking calories and doing my like regular fitness regimen, which was pretty intense still. So
Right.
it like didn't really make sense to me, which I know you see that all the time.
Yeah, totally. Hmm.
Yeah, so then I kind of continued to once again put my body through hell, because I was like, okay, like I have these 10 pounds, I should be able to lose them. So I honestly just kept like doing what I knew and like lowered my calories, tried to work out more. I did connect at that time with a naturopath who had put PCOS on my radar. So then
Good.
um, I got referred to an endocrinologist. And I think because I hadn't had a lot of weight gain at that point, he didn't believe me. So he didn't run any blood tests. He didn't do anything. He just like took a verbal of what my symptoms were, and then at the end just said, well, no, like you don't have PCOS. You've had weight gains. There's lots of diets out there that can fix that.
Gosh, how do you rule out a diagnosis without doing any lab work? That's just lazy medicine. I hate.
Right? Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that was dismissed. Mhm.
Well, exactly. And so I like left his office in hysterical tears because my cortisol at that point had been very debilitating, and in fact I did have to go off work for a few months so I could get that under control. And so yeah, I felt incredibly dismissed.
Mhm.
And then from there, to be honest, that's when the spiral really started, when I didn't feel believed. And so I was like, hey, well, he's right. I probably just have to be more disciplined. And so the more intense that I got, actually, the more I gained weight. And then I did reach probably upwards, I would say, of like a 40-pound weight gain. And could not lose it. Like my body was just stuck no matter what I did. And so I spent so much time at war with my body, trying to do all the things to get it to release this weight, trying the gluten and dairy free. I know how you feel about that one.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's good to try things, right? But yeah. Okay. So nothing felt like it was working. You weren't getting anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So, it's funny though, what the wake up call was for me. So I spent about a year in this, like just really at war with my body, and honestly kind of felt like, well, I guess this is just life then. I guess I'm just going to have to be miserable in my body because I can't be skinny. Right. And like, this is just what it's going to be. And I guess I'm just going to have to accept how miserable this is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, isn't that sad? But it's like so many women do this.
So many. Oh my gosh. Like they feel like they've been spinning their wheels. They're stuck. Totally. That's so relatable. Yeah.
Totally.
I've been there too. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes, I remember, like, I've seen on Instagram that, like, you've posted your own PCOS journey, and that also involved weight gain for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, a ton. Yeah.
So lots of this is probably sounding relatable then to you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I bet everyone listening is absolutely like 100%. That's me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So then what? So then how did you how did you decide that, you know what, like enough is enough? Because it sounds like you got to that point and decided I'm going to switch to actually helping women to conquer what I spent so long fighting. How did you get to that point?
So really good question. So the wake up call for my body image, there were two really pivotal moments for me. So I, like, right before COVID happened, my family went to Hawaii, and so I went along with them. And so we were there for 2 weeks, and the whole time I was very miserable. I was also like super stressed too, because I was working on my master's at the time, as well as like working full time. Like, it was just like all the things were spiraling. And so I was very miserable, very inflamed, dealing with this weight gain. To be honest, didn't even want to be on the trip because I felt so uncomfortable in my body.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sure lots of women can relate to like going on vacation, and then when you're there, you're almost kind of wishing you were home, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened to me, is that the whole time I was wishing I was just at home so I could, be back on track, being really strict with my meals and things like that. And so we were, one of the pivotal moments was we were at the beach one day, and I was like in this bikini feeling really uncomfortable with myself. And then I had gone to one of the public washrooms, and there was actually a girl in there who had said, oh my gosh, like, I'm so happy we're running into each other. I've been seeing you on the beach, and I just wanted to tell you how cute you look. Like, I love your bikini. You look so good in it. And I was like,
yeah. Oh yeah. You're like, what? Really?
Yeah, like now I'm like, that is so nice. But at the time I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So then that was, I guess, a sign to me where it's like, okay, so I guess I'm actually not seeing myself the way that other people see me. Like right? Like I clearly have a harsher image of myself.
We are our own worst critics.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was wake up call number one. Wake up call number two was on the same trip, probably, I would say, like the second last day we were in Hawaii. I was just sitting there kind of reminiscing on the trip. And I was like, it's actually terribly unfortunate that really my only memories of this trip are me being miserable and picking apart my body in the mirror. Like, I didn't actually enjoy myself.
Good for you for reflecting on that, though, because it's so easy to not take that breather and not even think about how that whole experience was completely transformed by this, like, viewing it through this negative lens. So good for you for coming to that conclusion. That's huge.
Thank you. And like, to be honest, I don't even know how I did it in that moment.
It's your best. Yeah. So is there like certification that you were like, how did you switch from social work to therapy?
So my master's is in clinical social work. And so
Okay.
that's the goal, is that you're going to be a therapist. And so
Oh, okay.
initially, totally. I know everything is so different in the States.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's even the titles. Tell us, going back to, I'm thinking about that beach day now, because I feel like everybody can relate to that. And honestly, some of us tremble at the word bikini. Like, oh, I've been there. Oh my God, I've been there. What would you say are some excellent tips to give women on days that they're like bad body image days? We all have them. Mine gets so bad before my period comes. Like, I swear, like, good thing I know it's coming. Otherwise I'd be like, oh, but what are like some tips, like actionable things that women can do when they're having some of these really just tough days? Give us some. I would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start off by saying that, like, it is so normal to have bad body image days. And like, even me as a body image therapist, I still have bad body image days. And so it's not that we're ever going to be able to avoid them. It's just that we're going to be able to help make them like less distressing.
I love that. Yep.
Number one thing that I recommend is really taking control of your nervous system. I know that like with PCOS and the stress response, we really want to be honing in on that. And so specifically with body image, the reason why I would recommend, so say for example, deep breathing is a really good way to help regulate our nervous system, kind of calm that stress response. The reason why I recommend this is because when we are in fight or flight, so that amygdala is activated, the front part of our brain, the function turns off essentially. And that part of the brain is in charge of rational thinking, decision making, being able to recognize maybe when our thoughts aren't helpful or healthy for us. And so we really want to be able to take control of that, because if you are spiraling, that's a sign that you're elevated, you're probably in fight or flight, because the body doesn't know the difference between just being distressed and feeling like you're a failure because you've gained weight or you can't lose weight, or being chased by a tiger. The body doesn't know the difference.
Yes. Okay.
We really, really want to focus on deep breathing when you're noticing that you're starting to spiral.
Okay.
The next thing I recommend is actually like breaking a bad body image day down into chunks. So we often feel like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to get through this day? Or like this whole day is kind of botched now. I feel awful.
Yeah, or like before an event, like a vacation or like a wedding or a party. Yeah.
100%. Yes. And then we make it all about our body, right? And like we kind of feel like our body is in the spotlight. And so if we can kind of break that down into chunks to say, okay, so like within the next 10 minutes, what can I do that would have nothing to do with the way that I look or nothing to do with my body? What's something that I can initiate right now? Because then that kind of gets you back into action and puts you into decision making, which would shift us out of fight or flight as well when we do start to make decisions.
Love it. And scrolling would not be one of these things, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, in fact, we do not want to be scrolling on social media when we are in a bad body image. I love that you actually mentioned that.
Okay, good. I know that about myself, but yeah, that's a great tip. It's like so much harder to carry out, say, but yeah.
100%. Yes. Okay. There has been research that has shown that social media actually does impact our body image. Yeah. And you've probably even felt that, like, say, for example, when we're maybe only following people with the ideal body that we want, right? Like, it's just kind of almost like a constant reminder and a constant punishment that we're not where we want to be.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can relate to that too.
The next thing one of the, I guess kind of biggest things you can do as well is on a bad body image day, not weighing yourself, not focusing on the mirror. Sometimes we want to like check our body, right? Like whether that be that we're physically checking our body in the mirror, or we're like kind of like pinching ourselves or being so mindful about like how do our clothes feel, right? Like that's probably a little bit relatable because we all do it.
Yep.
And so I actually say to stay away from this, because when we are in fight or flight, essentially our nervous system is just trying to help us get the heck out of the situation. So it's like we either need to fight and take control of this, or we need to like get the heck out so we don't feel this way anymore. And some of the ways that can translate into that is by like doing the body checking, weighing ourselves, really trying to take that control. And so it actually does make the body image monster bigger.
Okay. Love that. That's a great tip.
Yeah, so definitely stay away from that one, even though it's hard, right? In that moment when we're just like, I just want to know, did I gain a pound?
Oh, I know. Yeah. You want to, yes. Yeah. It's so hard to do. And it's, thinking about a thing you can switch to that you're actually going to get derived joy from, go towards that. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And I know like probably for you, even when it's like, I know that you have children, right? And so it's like, okay, so what can I focus on like in terms of like being a mom, right? What can I do within the next 10 minutes that would just make me feel really accomplished or really proud of me as a mom, right? Like taking that experience away from your body and just like one of the roles that you have or one of the pieces that make up who you are.
Yes, I love that. And I have done that, come to think of it, like on days that I felt like that, I have run to do the opposite. So I will purposefully, say, and I do this all the time with my daughter anyways, but I will purposely say to my daughter, like, build up her confidence in any other way outside of how she looks, or I'll compliment myself. So she is modeled that versus I never, ever, ever, ever say a bad word about myself physically or in any way, but really physically in front of my daughter ever. So, I run to do the opposite. And I think that's been a helpful tool for me just as a mom, because I think that she will have those days, right? Like you said, like we can't 100% avoid them. It's how we wrestle with them and how we conquer them. So if I can give her tools rather than just try to skirt around the issue and say, you'll never experience that. I'm lying to myself if I think that. So yeah, I love that.
I love that. And honestly, modeling is one of the best ways to teach kids because they're just like sponges, right? Like they just soak up everything. So that's so beautiful that you're so focused and intentional on doing that for her.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. When I learned that I was having a girl, when I found out the gender, I think when I was like 13 weeks or something, I was scared when I found out I was having a girl. And it's so sad because the first thought that I had was, oh my gosh, I have this. I mean, I obviously felt a ton of pressure and responsibility anyway, but I felt this added weight on my shoulder, like, oh my gosh, I have to take on raising a woman in this world, right? And like all the body confidence issues that I'm going to have to help her navigate. It was really scary. And it's crazy. I felt very little of that when I found out I was having my son. So it's just another reminder of how much, we have to deal with as women, and especially if we have something that can set us up to face this hard, tough battle more, like PCOS or, a thyroid condition, something like that. So
yeah. And especially because now too, like with PCOS, it's unpredictable, right? And so you've had this really unpredictable experience that you couldn't control that probably kind of came out of left field for you. So you know how bad that these things can be coupled with body image. And so I can see how you're almost kind of like fearing that for her.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think about it all the time, but yeah, one day at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Motherhood, but yeah.
There's no way around it. PCOS is complex and multifaceted. What we know about it, including how best to treat it, is constantly changing. That's why I've dedicated my life's work to helping women put their PCOS into remission. Inside my signature program, the PCOS Boss Academy, women lose weight permanently without restriction and master their most stubborn PCOS symptoms. If you're looking to get pregnant or want to be a mom in the future, my ultra-successful Get Pregnant with PCOS program supports moms to be every step of the way in conquering PCOS symptoms and bringing home the baby of their dreams. Plus, there's an additional weight loss mode to check into. These are all of the science-backed nutrition and lifestyle tweaks you need to improve your PCOS and change your life from a qualified healthcare provider and leading PCOS expert in the field. Ultimately, we are in control of our PCOS, and I would love to work with you inside one of my upcoming programs so you can step into the best version of yourself and start feeling like you again.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about something that a lot of us struggle with or have struggled with in the past or may struggle with in the future. And that is binging and binge eating, and how that can play such a big role in our journey, our health journey, in our weight journey. Tell us a little bit about why does binging happen? And I will, the reason why I'm talking about this is because so many of us feel this insurmountable amount of guilt and shame that obviously can translate into body shame, and negative self-talk after a binge. So why does this happen? And what are some things we can do to help this? Because it's something that a lot of us struggle with.
Yes, yes. So binging happens for a few reasons, but the two that I'm going to focus on is restriction. So that be like physical restriction of not eating enough, or mentally restricting, sorry. So like I'm not allowed to have pizza, or I'm only allowed to have one piece, or, we can do whatever we want on this weekend, but then on Monday, I'm going to be really good.
My God, Savannah, I love that you just broke that up. I have never been explained binge eating in that restriction in that way. There's physical, but then there's mental. Yes. Oh my God, that like a light bulb just went on my head. That's amazing.
Yes.
Mental.
No, I love that. Yes. And like what we need to understand is like when we do these things, there is going to be backlash. Like even like I see this all the time as a therapist in other capacities as well. So for example, like people that maybe aren't allowed to feel their emotions, whether that be that there's someone in their environment that's not allowing them to, or they're personally not allowing them to feel their emotions, it later comes out as anger. So there's always backlash, right? And so we can view food in this way that if we're restricting it, we are going to experience that backlash. In this case, we are going to binge. That biological response is going to take over, because our body is going to say, oh my gosh, okay, like you're telling me I'm not allowed to have pizza. And so now that it's sitting here right in front of me, I need to load up.
Okay. So what do we do? Like, do you work with, I'm sure you work with clients who deal with this. Like, what's a couple things that you would say to somebody who's experiencing this, in terms of getting it, I don't want to say under control because it is a normal response, but something that feels damaging to them. What are some tactics?
So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're eating enough. If we're getting like ravenous, that's a sign that we're not eating enough, right? And you would probably see this all the time and hear about this all the time, where we're usually reaching for those like sugar carby things because our body is like
salad when we're starving. Yeah, no, not me.
Totally, exactly.
Makes sense.
Yes, and so. We want to make sure that we're addressing that first and foremost. That's always like my first step, to be honest, is like, we need to make sure that you're eating enough. And then also not putting foods off limits. And like, this is where I love your approach, Corey, because like I've been following you on Instagram for so long. And I know that you take a non-restrictive approach where it's like, yes, like we absolutely want to be having the things that we love. And so being able to give ourselves that unconditional permission to eat them, but then also to actually eat them. It's not enough to tell ourselves that like you're allowed to have the pizza, but then not let yourself have the pizza, right? So we actually engage in the behavior.
Chef's kiss. Yes.
Yes.
I've been through a couple bouts of that in my life, and I'm thinking about that, one of them, there's just certain situations that come to mind, and I'm like not proud of this. And it's embarrassing, but I'm always pretty transparent with my own journey. And I remember when I was kind of in the depths of my like trying to restrict everything and take it all out. And I just remember having like the biggest binge fest I've ever had. I raided every drawer in the house, and I felt so shitty the next day. I mean, my God, like it was awful. And I also remember when I was, I thought, being like vegan and not eating meat was like the healthiest way to go. And I'm not, that works for some people. It does not work for me. But I remember coming home after a work job, and I was catering. I was catering as like a side job. And I had cooked up this huge thing of buffalo chicken wings. I'll never forget this. And I had catered them all day. And then my boss was like, oh, we have leftover chicken wings, take them home. And my boyfriend at the time ate meat. So I was like, oh, I'll bring them home for him. I was in the fridge at, I want to say 2 o'clock in the morning. And we had been out that night. And this was, oh my gosh, in my early 20s. So there was definitely alcohol involved. And I remember like coming to kind of in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning, covered in buffalo sauce, because I had been binging eating buffalo chicken wings, because I just needed them so bad. And like, you know, it's those moments that I think about how for me, restriction never works. And that's true for me with desserts, with sugar, with alcohol. I cannot completely eliminate these things and swear them off. They have to be in my life in small amounts, because that's what keeps me more, you know, balanced.
Yeah.
And that black and white mentality, it can be so, so damaging in the long run.
100%. And that's what gets us into that, like, on the weekend, we've been so good all week. So now we need to reward ourselves. And then on Monday, we have to get back on track, right? Like that black and white is so confusing for our body. And like, I want you to know that I've totally been there too with pizza. Like I always come back to pizza because that's my like personal binge food and trigger food that I could not have in the house at some points, because I would eat the whole entire thing and be sick after. But now though, because I have given myself unconditional permission to eat pizza, I'll like eat a couple slices and then I'll forget about the rest in the fridge and it'll go bad and I have to throw it out.
That is huge. I mean, imagine the evolution of that, what you said before versus now. I mean, that's incredible work. Tell us something that you had posted about this on your page, and I loved it. Unexpected things that happened once you got to this place that you just described. What are some things that happened for you when you started to work on healing your body image?
I love that question. And this one, to be honest, is kind of like near and dear to my heart, because it was a lot of things that I actually had kind of shamed about myself, and could finally actually get to a place of almost like appreciation and just compassion for those parts of me. And so the first part is like my body, that I gained compassion for my body and actually allowed myself to go through a grieving process of that smaller body. Like this part of body image healing is so under talked about, but like we might feel anger or sadness, or denial, like all those things that we would go through for like grieving a human, we can go through for grieving our smaller body. And that's what I did. Like I just allowed myself space to feel those things.
Love it. Love that. So powerful.
The other thing as well is that body anxiety likes to convince us that there's going to be something like catastrophic that's going to happen if we're to gain weight, right?
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, the world is going to end.
Exactly. And like sometimes it's like I don't even really know what I'm scared of, but I just know that I'm scared.
Yes. And you know what is something that was what I feared too back in the day, was that I was less worthy of love from my friends. Wouldn't like me anymore. They wouldn't want to hang out with me anymore. Never happened. You know, my partner would, all these things, all these unfounded fears. Yeah. Okay. So confronting those.
Yes, totally. And like when I confronted that, what I actually realized is that like the worst case scenario didn't actually happen. So what I want to say though is like when we get scared of gaining weight, like I don't want to minimize or deny that there is fat phobia, and that people in larger bodies do experience like stigma and things like that. I don't want to minimize that at all, because I know those things are real. But what I'm about to say is more so like I guess in my day-to-day life, the worst case scenario did not happen. I get up, I make my coffee, I get dressed, I go to work, just like I did all those things when I had a smaller body.
Yes, so true. It's so true. I love it. Yep. Yeah. So confronting those fears and realizing that most of them are not going to happen.
Exactly. Yes. And then when I had mentioned before that there was some parts of me that I held lots of shame for, so that was the part of me that felt shame for just like really enjoying food. Like yes, like I'm just someone where I love food. Like food makes or breaks a vacation for me. That's just how I am. And like now I'm like, that doesn't have to change, right? Like
Yes.
I don't have to only eat just because it's fuel, right? Like I can enjoy, um, I can enjoy food. And so I actually ended up just making peace with that part of me that just like wants to have a good meal, and that's okay. And like, because I had given myself that unconditional permission to eat food, I wasn't as obsessed with those things anymore. And so by kind of almost like releasing that control I thought that I needed to have, I actually regained control.
So cool. And I think it's also there was one thing I was going to say and you said that you're taking away power from
Mhm.
that, right? And you're putting the power back into your hands. And I think it's the same, with like if we are, and I was talking about this with my therapist the other day, but when you forgive somebody, you are taking back the power. They no longer have power over you. And I feel like it's that with this situation too. When we accept it, it is what it is. We love ourselves regardless. That power is back in our hands. I love it. Oh, so
Exactly.
good.
I love how you said that. And it kind of like coincides with the next thing that happened, or I guess kind of like the last thing that was really like I guess kind of like inspirational for me about this process is that I found myself no longer having guilt and shame about what I ate, and I could move very fluidly through maybe having a couple slices of pizza, but then at my next meal having some veggies, right? Like I can move very effortlessly now through those things.
Totally. Yeah. And you can take on all of those traits. And, when I say that, I mean somebody who loves veggies and somebody who doesn't want veggies today, and somebody who, loves more, like not non-veggie foods, right? Like, whatever sounds good. And that's okay too. It's all good. So tell me something too. You had talked about referring to our bodies as her.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me what that means and like how can we apply that? Because I like really love this concept, but I really want you to share it so that other listeners can use it.
Totally. And this was so transformational for me and my self-talk towards my body. So this helps us move towards self-compassion, right? We
Mhm.
probably heard lots about self-compassion. So being kind to ourselves. And
Mhm.
so by referring to our body as her or she, kind of like it's this like other person or like this like separate entity outside of ourselves, that helps us build compassion for ourselves, because like we're nicer to other people than we are ourselves,
So
right?
yeah, it's so true.
By flipping this script, what this helps us do is this helps us to be able to start to build a narrative to be kinder to ourselves. So like Corey, before you had mentioned like unlovable was something that you had thrown around, where you were worried that your friends were going to abandon you and things like that. And so if we could almost like take that example and say, okay, so she's going to be unlovable if she gains weight.
Right.
Can you see how like different that sounds versus I'm
Right.
going to be unlovable if I gain weight?
Yeah.
So even when no, that's okay. So like even we can do this to examine like these
Yeah.
expectations that we have for ourselves with like these crazy workouts that we're wanting our body to do when we're too tired, or like these low calorie diets. Like if we were to say like she is so exhausted after working today, but she absolutely has to go to the gym or we're going to be mad at her.
That sounds
Like, doesn't that sound
yeah.
awful?
Yes, I love that's so powerful. And yeah, thinking about it like if it was my friend, like if I'm thinking about my best friend and she gained 15 pounds, like I wouldn't love her anymore. That's ridiculous. Like, my goodness. Wow, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a great way to reframe some of that, negative self-talk.
100%. And it helps us be able to identify
Yeah.
what would maybe be a healthy, normal thought and what's not. Because when we're living inside our head, we think that these things are normal and okay to be thinking about ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely normalize that. And our
Mm-hmm.
fat phobic, diet culture obsessed society does us no favors in that area. Oh my gosh. Someone posted a reel. It was like uh magazine covers from the 1990s. I was born in the 80s, but I grew up mostly as a young girl in the 90s. So I was horrified looking at them. And I think how many times I saw those in the checkout stand, when I was with my mom at the store. I mean, horrifying, like no shock that we see all of this, like as a result. It's no shock.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, and knowing how kids are like sponges, we
yeah,
tend to see that around the age of 6, children or girls specifically are already aware of their body size, and being more aware of those types of things. And so that's really young, right? When we think of a 6-year-old already wanting to have a smaller body.
oh my gosh, 6. I'm like, my daughter's almost 4, so that's frightening. Wow. So
Yes, absolutely.
as we kind of wrap up here, the last thing I want to touch on is this is something that I see all the time in clients, in program members. When we fall off track, when we fall off the wagon, right? Like maybe we're going gung ho, and then it's Friday, tomorrow's Cinco de Mayo here, I'm probably going to go out with some friends. And if I had this mentality still, then it would derail me, right? How do we get out of that all or nothing mindset, that black and white mindset? Because that can so easily put us back in that dark, dark place.
So what we want to do is we want to focus on what we're going to add in to our diet instead of take out. So the narrative is not, I'm going to be super good come Monday. It's okay. Maybe I'll focus on some more fiber because I know that's going to help me feel better. Right. So it's not that like, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to be eating pizza or drinking wine.
Right.
It's just that we're going to add in some vegetables. And so more so focusing on what we're going to add versus take away. So that's going to help keep us out of that like restrict and binge cycle. So that we're not like getting back into that like mental restriction.
That's so smart.
And right, like, and it's such a simple shift, to be honest, but we're like, no one's talking about this stuff. No one teaches us this.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's so ingrained in us. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's a few here. So deep breathing, that's another really good one to come back to if you're starting to feel that guilt and shame over what you ate over the weekend. I always do like people to know the difference between guilt and shame. There is a difference. So guilt would more so be like, it's bad that I ate pizza this weekend, where shame would be, I'm bad because I ate pizza this weekend. So it's more of like a personal kind of meaning that we take from it.
Okay.
Yes. And so the reason why I like to make that, like I like people to know the difference between that is because specifically when we're talking about shame, how we combat shame is with compassion and empathy. And so that's where we can think of like, if this was my friend right now, how would I want her to feel? What could I say to her? And just sitting with that, right? Like sitting with how that feels in your body when you say kind things to your friend.
So love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like so powerful in even just outside of body image, but like lots of areas of our life, we can use that compassion. And so when we're able to flip the script as well, when we can move back to when we talk about our body as like her or she, we can even use that here, right? Is like, is she actually bad for eating pizza? Right? Like we can start to really question that to move ourselves into that rational state of mind and being able to project ourselves into the future. So in 6 months from now, are you going to remember that on May 4th, you ate too much?
Right? No.
Like you're not going to, it's not going to matter.
No. Yeah. That's such a good way to think of it. Like grand scheme. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's so great, Savana. You are such a wise, I just love everything that you've had to say to us today. I mean, there's been such a great evolution that you've gone through, and it's so amazing that you're able to be on the other side. And not that, there aren't hard days still, right? It's always a a journey, not a destination, but that you're able to be on, air quotes, that other side and help women to get there too. I think that's just such important work to be doing and so needed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we could talk about this because I feel like particularly with PCOS, we're more susceptible to body image distress because of weight gain and hair growth, hair loss, acne, right? Like all those things that we experience with PCOS.
On top of that, exactly. It's so true. And tell us too, how can we find you? Like what, and how do you work with women and clients as well? Like I would love for any listener to be able to, to find you. And if they feel like they want to dive deeper into this super important work, how they can find you.
Yes, yes. So on Instagram, I am bodyimage.therapist. And I am currently running 12-week group coaching programs where we focus on lasting body image healing, really getting to that root of where that comes from and addressing that. So that our life no longer revolves around those distressing body image days. You're no longer obsessing over the size of your body and your worth is no longer tied to your weight. So that's what we focus on in the 12-week program. It's called Body Freedom Breakthrough. And right now I have a wait list in my bio as I'm going to be running a fall round. I currently have a round going right now, and we're seeing some really, really powerful results from women. So I'm excited to be running a fall round.
I feel like that'd be such a fun group to be in because there's such a important part, when we talk about community and this topic. I mean, what an amazing program. That's so cool. So I will link all of this in the show notes. Thank you so much, Savana. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was so great to come on here and chat.